At 28, Marc Cucurella is the Spanish international opposing fans think they have figured out. The MOP of curls, the fullback who grafts instead of dazzles, the face that launched 1,000 jokes and 1,000 memes. The football world decided long ago what he was. A role player, a punchline with good energy, a defender you notice for his hair before his performances. Headlines rarely reached for grand comparisons with him. There was no talk of the next great anything, no rush to crown him the heir to a legend. Brands didn't build global campaigns around a left-back from a small Catalan town. The cameras tried to define him through the hair, the yellow cards, the memes. But there is a detail the jokes never bother to explain. That hair everyone laughs at, the long, unmistakable curls, exists because of his mother. She asked him to keep it long when he was a boy, so that from the stands she could always find her son on the pitch, no matter how far away he ran. What the world turned into a punchline was, all along, a quiet signal between a mother and her child. It was not a manufactured slogan. It was a declaration that fame could enlarge his world without earning the right to rewrite where he came from. Before the Euros and the World Cup, Marc's story was measured in futsal courts, a father's long shifts, and a chance conversation that changed everything. Born on July 22, 1998, Marc Cucurella Saseta grew up in Alella, a small coastal town about 20 minutes up the coast from Barcelona. Daily life there followed the practical rhythm of a working-class Catalan household, school, family, and football running through everything, the way it does for so many kids raised in the shadow of the Camp Nou. Marc grew up at the intersection of ordinary work and quiet ambition. His father, Oscar, balanced life as a car salesman with a real passion for the game he had played as an amateur. His mother, Patricia, held the household together while coordinating the exhausting travel that academy football demands. It was Patricia and Oscar together who made an early, deliberate choice. They put a 4-year-old Marc into futsal rather than 11-a-side, believing the smaller game would sharpen his touch and his sense of space. The oldest of 3, he learned the sport on tight courts, against older and stronger boys, terrified but refusing to back down. The most revealing part of the story is how close it came to never happening at all. When Marc was around 8, a customer walked into his father's dealership to buy a car. The conversation drifted to football, and Oscar mentioned his ball-obsessed eldest son. The customer, almost in passing, suggested taking the boy to trials at Espanyol. It was not a grand act of charity, and no camera was there to record it. It was one ordinary conversation that quietly made the next step possible. Sometimes a difficult journey continues not because every obstacle disappears, but because someone by chance points toward the next door. That chance meeting led to 6 years in Espanyol's youth setup. Then, at 14, Barcelona's scouts noticed him, and Marc walked into La Masia, the academy that had shaped the players he'd grown up idolizing, including a certain overlapping left-back from La Hospitalet, who would eventually wear the Spain shirt for over a decade. Jordi Alba had already made that position his own. For a young Cucurella studying the same system, learning the same overlapping runs and high defensive line principles La Masia demands, there was a clear ceiling at the club he loved. On the futsal courts of Alella, the game had been immediate and instinctive, shaped by tight spaces and the movement of friends. As he climbed, that childhood game gradually became disciplined work. La Masia brought a whole philosophy, positional intelligence, technical repetition, and the constant pressure of proving he belonged. His father's demanding, strict standards, he later admitted, were tough, but tough in a way that built the discipline and resilience an elite academy would demand of him. His childhood did not abruptly end, but its rhythm changed. Over time, his individual style developed the recognizable patterns that would later define him. The relentless engine up and down the flank, the tenacity in the tackle, the willingness to do the unglamorous work that wins matches, the overlapping runs, the inverted pressure that disrupted wingers before they could build momentum. What looked like pure stamina beneath stadium lights had been strengthened through years of repetition. And here his story diverges from the anointed prodigies. There was no straight line to the top. He worked through Barcelona's B team, then loans to Eibar and Getafe, proving himself in La Liga the hard way. When the big move finally came, it was to Brighton, where he was named the club's player of the season. Then Chelsea in 2022, and even that began with a difficult stretch before his performances firmly re-established him among Europe's best. Under Enzo Maresca, the Chelsea manager who trusted him unconditionally in a high-pressing system, he found the structure that finally let his qualities flourish at the highest level. His was not a coronation, it was a climb. Slowly, then all at once, the punchline became a serial winner. With Chelsea, he lifted the Conference League and, in 2025, the FIFA Club World Cup, moments that filled Stamford Bridge with a kind of disbelief that eventually gave way to pure celebration. With Spain, under head coach Luis de la Fuente, he was a key part of the side that won UEFA Euro 2024, and then added a World Cup in 2026, the grafter from Alella standing among champions. The Euro 2024 final, played against England, was where those curls were seen by hundreds of millions, a moment that made the punchline feel permanently retired. Yet the story keeps folding back on itself. This is a man who is, above all, a family man, a partner and 3 children, and a young son on the autism spectrum whose story he and his wife have chosen to share openly, using their platform to help other families navigating similar paths feel less alone. The boy, raised by a car salesman and a mother who wanted only to spot him in the stands, grew into a father determined that his own children would always know where they stood. For years, Cucurella had been asked to accept a smaller role in the story, the sidekick, the meme, the guy with the hair. Instead, the truest symbol of who he is stayed exactly where it started. Those curls, grown long at his mother's request, now recognizable in stadiums all over the world, from Camp Nou to Stamford Bridge, from a packed Olympiastadion in Berlin to the biggest stage of all. The distance between Alella and the biggest trophies in the sport is enormous, but that hair suggested the distance had never erased his sense of belonging. Every time the cameras found him celebrating, framed by those unmistakable curls, he acknowledged that the journey had never belonged to talent alone. It had been sustained by a father's chance conversation, a mother's simple wish to find her son in a crowd, futsal courts in a small coastal town, and the kind of long, unglamorous climb that no one thinks to turn into a highlight reel.